Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of Top Tutorial. So today at Samji's request we're actually tackling Sandy Clocktower, which is also on Flo's track list, which is going to be our next CTL opponent. Overall a really strong track pick for running, just in general due to the fact that the strongest shroom cut is completely unavailable in online races since the shroom cut lap 1. A lot of back spots that can be put on fast strats and just overall really driving intensive track. In terms of stuff, it's still relatively new, so it's not as optimized as it could be. There's a big gap between 1, 2, and 3, with a lot of the top 10 after that being pretty close. I'm actually only 10th worldwide, but I'm hoping to change that once I grind it a bit, especially going for sub, but I just wanted to put it out as quickly as possible. So, let's get started on the track itself. So, I'm actually going to tackle at least in part all 3 laps, since the shroom cut and the path of the cycles at the end, especially like these platforms, is quite different. Also the shroom cut at the start, so we're just going to tackle everything like that when we get to it. The start is fairly simple. You just drive to the side of that real quick, drift trick to the right, get the shroom cut. So far so good. Drifting tight, and we come to the first technical part of the track, which is these 2 flip tricks right there. So what you want to do is that for both of them, you want to go off the side and drift trick right to land back on the track and get as much low air as possible. It is much more important than the second one. The first one, doing that does gain you a bit of time, but it's much smaller. The first one is essentially just to get as good of an alignment as you can. Usually you want to land somewhere around here, get a wheelie towards that, and start a right drift as you get to the corner of the boost panel. Though in my case, in the case of this run, I don't think any of the alignments are really correct. So what you can do is that if you go off around here, if you go a bit straighter, you can start with a left drift and then chain into a right drift right as you go off. As you'll see right here, it still gives me quite the low air, and I'm pretty much able to do it easily. Here, you just, once you land, you just go into a drift as soon as possible. Go a bit wider here. This corner is pretty devious. If you can easily just go too tight and bonk against this corner right here, so don't be afraid to just go a bit wider, especially considering the next corner. Empty wheelie, and then your wheelie, if you keep it going, it's not going to last long enough to go to the end, so you want to reset your wheelie as you have the speed boost, and also just to give you better alignment to the shroomless. This shroomless has actually ruined quite a few runs. The best way I can describe it is hopping before you land on the edge of that first arrow over here, and then soft drifting, aiming for that corner, and then just TFing off that to make it to the other side. A side trick can easily punish you, so just make sure to get an up or down trick, and you'll be able to make it fairly consistently at a fairly low height. And finally, we come to the final section, which is the 2 platforms on a cycle. So on lap 1 will be the only one, if you're on top space, where the platform is on the outside. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to land on this platform at a fairly tight angle and just drift onto this, and before going straight, as you'll see right here. Landing fairly tight, drifting wide, go onto that. Release your empty as the trick boost ends to make sure you stay at max speed as long as possible. And also a little trick, which is why I advise to release your empty late, because in case you ask me, well, what are my alignments shit, and I end up just going into, like, on the left side, won't I lose time realigning? Actually, believe it or not, no, because simply due to the fact that you can realign in midair while you're in a wheelie without losing your wheelie speed, which is usually due to wheelie turning. As you'll see right here, you can see me go, like, flick a bit to the right here. You'll flick a bit to the right as I'm in midair to fix my alignments to be further in line with the corner coming up. And finally, as one last little bit, you want to hop early around where this section of the wood is in order to hop over it, because if you just let yourself fall, if you slip at the end, you'll still go a bit wider than you want to. So you just hop, and that allows you to drift super tight going into the last corner, just 2 empty wheelies, and get into lap 2. This is where the analysis would usually end, but there's actually stuff that changes all 3 laps, so we're going to cover everything. Once you arrive, you just get a trick, land, and wheelie. Here you actually don't want trick if you're in a time trial or if you have shrooms, you don't want to trick here. Instead, you want to aim for this little bump right here. Simply due to the fact that it gives you a bit less airtime. You'll still have the speed boost when you land on the off-road, so you won't lose any time. Plus, you can theoretically get a drift onto a trick onto this edge right here. Though it's not as consistent, the best way to make it consistent is holding back when you're in the air to make sure you land on that edge. Otherwise, even if you don't get the trick, it's not that bad, seeing as you're gonna shroom right after here, cutting as tight as possible. In fact, if you trick, you can maybe that can maybe mess up your alignment a bit. So not getting a trick there is not that huge of a time loss. Just drift tight, get everything sorted. Here is pretty much everything is pretty much the same until we come back to the this section with the moving platforms, and this time, and both times actually, the first platform will be on the closer side. So what you want to do is land a bit wider and try and go off super tight off that section right here. Don't try and go off too far to the left, otherwise you won't get a trick and just fall off. So you want to drift, get off here and land on that platform directly to gain a bit more time. As you'll see right here, drifting wide, going tight, and you just land on that. If you're a bit short, you can always release your MT in midair around here in order to get that extra bit of distance. You'll lose a bit of time on landing, but it's better than just falling off. And here's pretty much the same thing, pretty usual. And here, seeing as the shroom cut is quite a bit different, you actually want to trick on the first ramp here. A drift trick, the way you want to do things, and the way that I pretty much had to salvage during this run, is that you want to get a drift trick right. So you land facing left and get a bit of a wider angle on cuts, which is the best way to do it safely. Is just start as wide as possible so you can go tight, because otherwise you can easily just shoot over here and lose a shit ton of time. But here I pretty much had to salvage by getting a bounce right here and staying wide. Thankfully, that didn't kill my run, though it easily could have, especially seeing as my exit was not as quick as it could have been. And finally, for the ending, same thing around here, just go tight. Though you can go even tighter, seeing how like far left the platform is, though I wouldn't recommend it, just in case you don't get the trick and just end up falling off. Better play it safe. Release the MT, same thing here. And finally, for the ending, seeing as going on the downhill and on the trick is slower, what you'll want to do, though it is risky, so I wouldn't recommend it in an actual online race, or if you're like on a really, really good pace, is go off on the left side around here, and that'll allow you to pretty much just float down above the downhill and get straight into the finish line. So yeah, that's everything you need to know about Sandy Clocktower. Overall, a decently fun track to drive. The only really frustrating part is really getting that low trick over that second boost panel. It can ruin a lot of runs. It is close. If you've TT'd Delfino before, it's pretty similar. So you can understand that sometimes it kind of feels like RNG, whether or not you really get a high trick or not. Though you do get more consistent over it with a good amount of attempts. And yeah, I'll just leave you guys with the run and see you guys later.